Good morning. Welcome to the 12th day of December 2016. Let's get going. I gotta get to work and let's do this good life meditation. For some reason, I'm approaching this one today with a little anxiety. It feels like it's more than, maybe a little more than I can muster, more than I can handle. I've added a new principle and a new sub-principle, and I don't know that I can spit it out just right. It should be 15 with lots of little bits here and there, and I'm gonna probably have 2 minutes or so less than normal to do it in, given that I've recorded some other video from the weekend outing, really nice birthday event with the family. So let me jump into it. So let's talk about the new principle, the principle of war, and I've added that right up front. Not that the order of introduction is relevant to their order of importance necessarily, but there is some rhyme or reason that's beginning to develop out of the order of things. I am switching the order around to make more sense, and I deliberately decided to put war right up front, replacing the atomic principle, and I actually moved something else into the number 2 spot. So the atomic principle is number 3. The atomic principle has been in the first slot since the very beginning. I've got kind of, I'm become very fond of it being there. It's kind of like a touchstone for me to remind myself of the impermanence of everything, impermanence of everything. But here we go. Let's see the war. So why have I added the principle of war, and why does it belong in the number 1 spot? The reason is that I want to. Well, let me explain what happened, what precipitated this out. So over the weekend, I was having a little discussion and comments with someone, a theist, who was challenging me to open my mind to the existence of God, probably namely the Christian God. And this person wanted to refer me to some other links to watch some videos, which at first I was a little reluctant to do because I wanted to engage in the conversation with that person firsthand. And she, I believe it's a she, responded back that she thought that I really wasn't interested in the broader argument, and I just wanted to trip her up, which comment really took me by surprise, because I didn't say this, but my first thought was, of course I want to trip you up. Don't you want to be tripped up? And then, of course, obviously nobody wants to be tripped up. I mean, who wants to have their argument, cut to, the problems revealed and to be left holding a bag with a hole in the bottom? Nobody wants that. But in a purest, most objective manner, I would strive to become the kind of person that wants to have myself tripped up. I would like to be the type of person that can have my arguments tripped up so that I can reveal their failings. So moving the thought from her to me, because I'm just that kind of guy, no, I suddenly realized, it's important to begin to add to this whole apparatus of the good life the mandate of war upon my own principles. I want to wake each day and begin each good life meditation with a declaration of war upon the principles. That my first allegiance is to take down those things that I hold most dear, and to show them to be wrong, to lay them bare, to leave myself with no principles. I would rather stand naked and alone without principle in a wasted plain, a scorched earth, than to hold on to anything that was not true, however comforting it might be. And I thought about it, and I thought that's such a. Pardon me for making it sound this way. May sound like I'm patting myself on the back, and that's not what I intend. But it's such a worthy aim, such a worthy ambition, that it really does belong in the number 1 slot. So I wake up, stretch my arms, say, now I'm going to begin a new day. The first thing I'm going to do is go after my what I hold most dear, and hopefully I can kill it. So war, that's the first principle. War upon what I believe, what I hold to be true, what I hold as sacrosanct. Is that the word? Yeah. So now the second principle, I've moved this from another spot way down the list. I've moved reason up into the number 2 slot. And that's because reason is my instrument of war. It's the tool that I'll use in this campaign against myself. And I will use it against others too. I mean, so this war, I didn't say that, but this war also applies to others. I am at war with what is not true. So if I see it in others, I won't be walking down the street or banging on the door, tell me what you believe so I can, or what you think or believe so that I can fight you. I won't be doing that. But when I am proffered an opportunity to discuss something with somebody, and if it's what they tell me, if I can see the falsity in it or the fallacy in it, then I'll endeavor to point it out, as long as that person is interested and willing to engage in that way. So that reason is in the number 2 spot. And reason, of course, is the governing faculty, as I like to say over and over. It's how we know what is true, by looking at facts, developing arguments, and then seeing how those arguments bear fruit. If it be sour, then toss it away or refine it and improve it. If it be sweet, then hold it tentatively and refine more. Something's going on ahead of me. Flashing lights. So now the third, kind of on track, is the third principle, which is the atomic principle now. Atomic principle is that everything is made of bits and pieces in the universe, flowing and changing. So too you and I. Our time here as we are is limited, but what we are will always be. I guess I say always with a bit of hesitancy. So the next is the principle of nature. Everything in the universe has a particular nature, including you and I, and it's a worthwhile activity to try to uncover, what that nature is. So that we can live in accordance with that. And it's very worthwhile to recognize what the nature of other things are, so that we can react and respond better to them. I always pick something out. The nature of a business meeting. The nature of a business meeting is to be a congress of individuals coming together to achieve some end or to work out some difficulty. The people that attend it, 2 or more, have to usually speak a common language or have some vehicle of interpretation or interpreter. They typically, a meeting has an agenda and a prescribed amount of time. It's usually held in a particular forum, usually sealed off from the rest of the influences, although there may be technology that allows others to join remotely, like a phone or Skype business or Google Hangout, something like that. A meeting usually proceeds according to a formal protocol and is attended by a meeting organizer. Meetings are a great opportunity to make good progress on collective objectives. They're also challenging places where people's their will and their ego might get in the way of good progress, and conflict sometimes comes up. I think I've said enough. That's part of the nature of a meeting. So having said that, I'm better ready to handle meetings that come up today and every day, recognizing what the character of that is. Even given that in my job I attend meetings a lot. Next principle is this is where I was really worried that I was going to get things messed up, and I'm again tired today. Another long day, long weekend. A lot of stuff this weekend for an older guy. So I did war, reason, atomic principle, nature. The next one is maturity, with its sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. Maturity is that quality of having experience and the capacity of utilizing that experience to better ends, to make good decisions in life, to avoid problems, and to help us better extricate ourselves when problems do occur. Wisdom is the experience part that we gain of living. Fortitude is the ability to push through in a direction we know is worthy, or push through when things have gone south and we simply need to muddle our way through as best we can to the other side. Next is okay, so we did this is it. Even though the rest kind of follow the prescribed method, for some reason adding the new one at the front and swapping things around has messed me up. So war, reason, atomic, nature, maturity, social. The social principle. Human beings are social animals. We need one another. The best endeavors of our lives, the most fruitful are the social ones, because they yield the greatest virtue for as many as possible. I'll define virtue in just a moment. It's very rich and dense. It's like a cafe espresso of virtue, whereas serving our own self, our own needs, are a watered down Americano. Next is temperance, and the sub-principles. I've added a new one there. Sub-principles of suffering and simplicity. Temperance is the ability to restrain ourselves in all things, in the consumption of goods, services, activities, and emotions. By virtue of the fact that we're restraining ourselves from something that we want, we're going to suffer a little bit because we don't get what we want. So the suffering kind of comes part and parcel of it. I have no good way to resolve suffering. The Buddhists, as I said in another video, the Buddhists seem to have kind of worked that out by disconnecting themselves from the world in a way. Maybe I'm doing them a disservice in describing it that way. Let's move on to the next piece, though, the sub-principle there of simplicity, which is a big one for me. I was tempted to give it its own principle, and I may, yet it fits nicely with temperance. Simplicity in all things. To own less, to do less, to consume less, to take up less. Simplicity, 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 as Thoreau said. My goal is to own no more things than I can remember. As few things as possible. That this week I'll own less than I did last week. Just the minimum amount of clothing. Minimum amount of household goods in the smallest home that is practical and reasonably comfortable. To work in a simple manner, straightforward, forthright, honest. Honesty, boy, I just realized honesty belongs in here somewhere. Could it belong as a sub-principle of temperance, perhaps? I'll have to think on that. It's funny that I don't have it anywhere already. That's very interesting. Probably belongs as a sub-principle of temperance. I'm going to run out of space on the screen. I may have to abbreviate to just letters, like S, H. Suffering, simplicity, and honesty. It's in the human hashtags, though. So moving on from there, from temperance to, okay, hold on, I gotta do it again. War, reason, atomic, nature. War, reason, atomic, nature, wisdom, social, temperance, agency and indifference. Anything that's alive is an agent. Anything that exerts its will upon the world is an agent. Some agents, like us, have the ability to cogitate about the world. Sentience. The things that agents create are their objects, the objects of agency, and when you subtract out agents and all the objects, you're left with the great indifference, which is the fact of the universe, the great majority of the universe not giving a damn. And there's two types of indifference. There's the great indifference, and there's also lowercase indifference, which is our ability to recognize this sphere of our influence and what we can do in the world. So I can control my reactions to things, I can control my decision making, my judgments. A lot in the world I can't control. And I must remain indifferent to the point that I don't let the facts of the reality of those things affect me too deeply. But I'm not, it's a tricky tightrope there, because you don't want to walk in such a way that you're indifferent to suffering, but you respond to it from the perspective of your reason, not from your emotions. You exercise temperance with regard to your sense of injustice with undue suffering, and you respond with a clear head and level mind to act in the way towards helping to resolve it. Didn't come out quite as clear as I like, but my mind's a little muddy today anyway, so I'll leave that. I'm sorry I have to do it again, because I'm going to lose track otherwise. War, reason, atomic, nature, maturity, temperance, agency and indifference, best seat in the house. Hope I'm not starting to mess up. Best seat in the house is the perspective from which I am at right now. Not wanting to want to be anyone else, do anything else, or live another life, but to be all right with where I am right now, even if it's a terrible situation, while all the while working to improve it. Okay, after agency and indifference comes, let me try this process working. War, reason, atomic, nature, maturity, social, temperance, agency and indifference, best seat in the house, virtue. That's the one that would trick me up, because I removed reason. Reason would have been next. Now it's virtue, which I think I'm going to swap back around to purpose. Make purpose the primary and virtue the sub-principle. Purpose. Apparently the only real purpose we have in life is to get our genes into the next generation. Once we've done that successfully, raised our kids, and off they go, we can kind of die and get the heck out of the way. But in fact, that's kind of hollow for most of us, so it's not enough. We want some more purpose, some more meaning to our lives. So it's up to us to create that. Now that's where a lot of people get uncomfortable, because they want some objective meaning to turn to point to, that say everybody follow this. The problem is no one can quite agree on what that objective meaning is, and we begin cutting off one another's heads as a result, or burning each other at the stake, or going to war, or whatever. So I propose that instead of an objective, prescribed, dogmatic purpose to life, we work hard together to develop a reasonable purpose in life that is based on something that we can agree that is an objective truth. For example, the objective proposal that we should reduce human suffering. In fact, the suffering of all things. The less suffering there is in the world, the better. Suffering being defined as reduced longevity, reduced happiness, reasonable happiness, social happiness. We don't want pedophiles to be happy necessarily in the successful execution of their scheme. But we do want children to be happy. We do want adults to be happy in their lives and careers and the choices that they make, when they're reasonable, social, and virtuous. And we can pursue these things, like simple things like clean drinking water, improved access to better health care, comprehensive education, improved communication, better politics, better government, things like that. So purpose? For me, the purpose is I got my genes in the next generation, which wasn't such a big deal. I could have been fine without that. Doesn't mean I don't want my daughter. It just means that I'm getting my genes into the next generation wasn't such a big deal. There's plenty of us. But being a virtuous person is very important to me. So now, I'm kind of holding my hand in the air. That was 10. I've lost it again. I got to do it again. Sorry. War, reason, atomic, nature, maturity, social, temperance, agency and indifference, best seat in the house, virtue. Now comes the path of wildness, a way of getting unstuck in life, recognizing what information we have, using our best ability to compile that information into a reasonable course of action and making a decision. If we're not completely sure cognitively, if we're not completely convinced that it's the right way to go, then go with our gut feeling. Be ready to make a mistake. But the fact of moving forward in action is a virtuous thing in its own right. Next, the risk. I think I can make it at the end now. The risk of avoiding risk. A lot of people like me, we will avoid the surface level risks in life in order to facilitate a safer living, all without realizing that we are opening ourselves, exposing ourselves to a more insidious subsurface risk. That's the risk of avoiding risk. And that subsurface risk, which is the risk of not living according to your nature, assuming that nature is a virtuous and socially minded nature. But maybe it's one that you're not comfortable with, that you think others might not be comfortable with, that is not profitable, that is not expeditious to the goals and objectives that others have ascribed to you, or that you've ascribed to yourself through some other means. You're probably not going to be very satisfied with that. And that has a very, very dear risk of causing you to become a monster. Not, of course, a real monster, but a monster in terms of a miserable, very sad. Seen it before. It's a terrible thing. Stewing through life, poking at other people for make sure that you can try to spread the misery around. That's the monstrous part. Watch out for that. So if you engage in that risk, if you do not properly attend to that subsurface, that's deeper risk, you have the danger of sin and damnation. Sin is basically not living according to your nature, assuming that nature is social and virtuous. Not living according to your nature. There are other types of sin as well. There's the great sin of falsity, which is living a false life, which is not living according to your nature. And there's other types of falsity, of course. Another one is credulity, over eagerness, over willingness to believe without having good evidence that it's true. And the sub sin there of what's a sub principle, but it's a sin of faith. Faith is a colossal sin in a secular worldview, where we are willing to believe something in the absence of any good reason to believe. Faith allows us to get to a place that we want to be without doing the legwork of actually verifying that place is a virtuous or true place. The funny thing about faith is that it masks itself as a virtue, and it's so often promoted as a virtue when it's anything but. Another sin is superstition, which is very similar to all this. Is basically a type of falsity. Superstition is a type of falsity, though, that we recognize, thinking we can rig the system or look for omens, and again to avoid the hard work of thinking for ourselves. And finally, the great sin of dogma. Taking on board a collection of thoughts, objectives, ideas, laws, based on authority, because someone simply says so. That someone could possibly be God, who is nothing more than an artificial agent that someone created to blanket off the great indifference, to cause us to not feel it if we think that someone else is actually running the show. So finally, that's a sin and damnation. Damnation is what you result in. If you go down that route of sinning against your better self, sinning against reason, sinning against the world view of taking on board the actual hard work of figuring things out for yourself. And finally, next to finally is complete oblivion. That's what awaits all of us. Utter and complete. There's no good. I'm not saying that as a blanket that I'm 100% certain. I just have no reason to believe that there's anything after this, that there's anything magical about any of this, that there's anything spiritual, that I'm connected to anything, that when I die, that who I am will survive that in any way. I believe that God will be gone. But I'm open to being convinced otherwise. But no one's been able to do so. I haven't run across any arguments that are convincing, even in the slightest, that that's true. So until I'm convinced otherwise, I'm going to operate as though the end is a great finality. There is nothing after that. And what that means then is that there is no reunion, no reconciliation, and no final justice. We will not be meeting the loved ones who have gone before, who will follow us. We will not reconcile with them in another world, and there will be no final justice. The people that the evildoers of the world, and I do believe there is evil. Evil falls in nicely with sin. The evildoers of the world will get away with it if they don't have but they will have their punishment during the course of their life and their damnation, unless they're a sociopath and they don't feel it. So that's watch out. That complete oblivion is coming. So if you want to have that reunion with grandma or mom or the family member that you're distanced from, then do it now. If you want to reconcile in some way, better do it now. Work with that person. If you want to have that final justice, then act and vote and work towards a more just society. And finally, I got to the bottom, and I think I made all 15. Finally, willful time management. I need to. Final principle is to make good use of the time, each second and each minute and each hour of this day, which is my last. Very well could be, and so I can't waste any of this time. I can enjoy leisure. That's not a waste of time. But I don't want to fritter it away. How many reruns can I watch? How many times can I put off calling my mom, or looking my friends and coworkers, and indeed anyone in the eye, and looking deeper, and seeing the human that they are, and the feelings that they have, and reaching out to them, and being a good friend and a good society member, and a good Homo sapien, and a good member of the planet, looking out to the other species as well. No time to wait. So finally, let's wrap this up. Today's thought plan is to rise before, or collect my thoughts before breakfast, compose them over lunch, compile and record them before dinner, and then die before bedtime. It's not a thought, that number 4, but it fits. On today's action plan, to breathe steadily throughout the day at work, to go to every meeting and every engagement with my coworkers with an open mind and a steady eye, to look toward the aim of the projects, the aims of the project, the goals, and my function as a member of the team, to facilitate both, without distraction, without thinking or being distracted by the individuals or the trivial things like gossip that goes on, to not engage in that, to keep myself steadfast and forward, and to recognize that my tools, the instrument of my success in my job, is my ability to record activities, to log issues, risks, decisions, action items, and to escalate when necessary. I have no reason in the course of my life to do anything but smile, to be at peace, and I can facilitate my ends better in that manner. When I go home, likewise my family. I have my responsibilities there, much far greater and weightier, especially as concerns my daughter, and I need to take those on, even when the fatigue starts to hit me about 7:30 p.m. To hold steadfast, make sure that I've done my duty, to help my daughter with her homework as she needs it, to look my wife in the eye, to tell them both I love them, to take the dog for a nice walk, make sure he enjoys a bit of time outside as he deserves before bed as well, to talk to him and make him know he's loved as well, and to greet strangers I meet on the street with a friendly smile and a warm warm conversation if they're so inclined, and to thus live my life all my days to the end of this evening when I die tonight. And now the rotten day forecast. This is done in order to remind myself of the possibilities, the many possibilities for the day to go very wrong. My wife may die today. My daughter may die today. I should say should, but people take it the wrong way. I may die today. I will die today. I'll die a bad... I don't want to say that. I don't want to say I'll die in pain, because there are people who are dying in pain, and I don't want to belittle that. I got to find a good way to lay this out. I probably should just say my wife may die today, my daughter may die today, and I may die today. I'll just leave it at that. Say the more extreme stuff for myself in my head, in my helmet. I'm riding the bike. I'll lose my job. I'll lose my money.